Right. In addition to all of the sort of grandstanding, I also think there is some sort of winking and nodding to his base that's like, I wanted to do it. It didn't, it didn't work out, sort of continuing his narrative that is nowhere near reality. Harry, I want to ask you, Congressman Jamie Raskin says the committee is closely examining the Secret Service. Take a listen.
A number of the actions undertaken by the Secret Service have raised serious suspicions on the part of different members of the committee, and we intend to get to the bottom of that. That's a matter of utmost gravity. The Secret Service demands complete professionalism and not political loyalty to a particular individual.
Okay, so, Harry, to say nothing of the potential consequences for our national safety, for our national security, just talk me through the potential consequences then for those agents who covered for Trump.
Well, they've got to get to the bottom of it, and that's step number one. And I don't know if they'll have time. I don't think it's too likely if the House changes hands. But there's reason to think that people just destroyed their texts, even though they knew they weren't supposed to. And we now know they received all these really dire warnings of murderous action by the Proud Boys, and they just later said, well, we didn't get anything. Those are two scandals that really are at risk of being buried depending on what happens to Congress. I mean, Congressman Raskin is, right to express the intention, but Congress has to okay that kind of investigation. Some of them are potential crimes that the DOJ could look into, but there's a risk that this whole, what would in other days be a megaton scandal might actually just be set to the side.
Andy, throughout this hour, we've been talking about what it could look like if Republicans win in November, whether we're talking about the economy, whether we're talking about reproductive freedoms. And so I want to talk about what happens specifically to the January 6th committee should Republicans take control of the House come January. I mean, how that ticking clock then plays into the subpoena. Your thoughts?
We're talking to members of the January 6th committee and their advisors. They are very much thinking of this work as a race against the clock, and that clock ends at the end of this year. That is what is in the organization framework for the January 6th committee. And with the midterm elections so close right now, with control of the House going, very much on a knife's edge going into these midterm elections, they're planning and working as fast as they can to do as much as they can under the assumption that come January, come a possible change of control in the Congress, a Speaker Kevin McCarthy or whoever that Republican speaker might be is not going to say, hey, take another 6 months, or hey, continue that offshoot into the Secret Service. This new speaker is not only going to shut down the committee, but potentially look for ways to retaliate, potentially look for ways to undermine the work that has already been done. So they have a window of time now, just a couple of months, to try to get everything in and everything on the record that they can before that possible change happens.
Dukes of Hazzard star John Schneider taking his talents to the big screen in a brand new movie celebrating patriotism in one man's fight to fly Old Glory.
Seems normal, right? But the 70s TV sensation says woke Hollywood refused to fund or help distribute the film because of its pro-America message.
John Schneider joins us now. John, great to have you on the show this morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I certainly do.
So, John, before we get into the way Hollywood responded to your movie, I was fascinated to find out. So this is based on a true story?
I tour with music a lot. And last year I was in New Mexico, I believe, and I read a story about a man who went to jail rather than adhere to a restraining order, keeping him from driving within 300 yards of the local high school with the American flag on the back of his truck. And I've written for a long time. I wrote the last episode of Dukes of Hazzard. Hopefully that's not why it was the last episode. But it inspired me to jump into this character and build a character who was a veteran, who understands sacrifice, who understands a willingness to potentially die for his country, and who does not understand under any circumstances why young people are being applauded for disrespecting our flag at sporting events. So I went there. Not surprised that Hollywood wouldn't have anything to do with it. I mean, I recognize that logical, patriotic thought is the enemy to woke Hollywood. So I do need to clarify that a little bit. I didn't go to them hoping that they would help me, because I quit 11 years ago, and you know, I took my toys out of my sandbox and created my own sandbox. Well, and it's wonderful. We get great response from this film.
First of all, I love the analogy. I took the toys out of my sandbox. I created my own sandbox. We talk a lot about that on this show, how the answer is not to keep complaining about what the wokesters are doing in Hollywood and how we need to create our own culture. We have a culture, and it is, yeah, absolutely. How important was it for you to make this film, especially on the heels of COVID and all the sort of restrictions we had then?
Well, that was one of the things that fueled it as well. As soon as we started to give up our right of free assembly, I went on my YouTube channel and said, you know, these rights are people died for us to have them. They're very easy to give up. They're very difficult to get back. So that was one of the things that fueled this. And by the way, Hollywood, what they don't want anyone to know is that all they are is a line item on some globalist billionaire's spreadsheet. Okay, that's all they are. They owe their soul to the company store as well, as do all of these woke celebrities. They don't do that because they care. They do that because that's what's paying for their mortgages. Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, these people don't. If I may, that's the difference. We care about our country. We love it, and we are willing to die for it. ToDieForMovie.com or ToDieForDVD. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Great to have you on the show this morning.
Yeah, we're big fans, and you're still looking good. I'm just going to say it.
Lucia Canella overcometh emotion late Wednesday after she says her 37-year-old son was stabbed to death outside this Gowanus smoke shop. A deadly encounter that a witness says began after the victim held the door open for his alleged attacker, but never got a thank you. The suspect responding with, "I never asked you to open it."
He do something nice for you, you can say at least thank you. That's the only he asked me. Say thank you. He didn't say nothing more, but it's coming a fight. And he lost. Now I don't have my only son.
Surveillance video from inside the store shows the wild brawl. That's the victim in white, identified by friends and family as Jay Nunez. He and the suspect exchange blows, even continue fighting outside. We're pausing the video the moment he's stabbed.
It's like you only see that in movies. It felt like he got disrespected by the guy not saying thank you to him. If we would have said thank you, none of that would have happened.
After the attack, the suspect can be seen leaving on a bike as Nunez, now covered in blood, stumbles back to the store.
The last words he was saying, I got stabbed. Oh, he stabbed me. That was the last words, and then he collapsed.
This employee who witnessed the attack did not want to be identified.
I was trying to break the fight as much as I can, just to not to make it go any crazier after that. I was telling the guy, put the knife away, put it away, it's not worth it. He was kind of responding to me at first. And then once they step outside, I couldn't do nothing. It's brutal. I can't say nothing about that. It's insane.
Overseas now to the war in Ukraine as residents flee the city of Kherson ahead of the attempt to retake the city lost in the first days of the war. ABC's Britt Clinton has more from Kyiv. Good morning, Britt.
Good morning, Eva. Yeah, more signs of a Russian retreat in the south. Ukraine saying it's continuing to liberate villages in Kherson. A resident in the regional capital telling ABC News that the situation there is growing more desperate, with shops, banks and cafes all closing en masse.
This morning, as the war rages, Russia falling back, abandoning their positions in the south near the city of Kherson, around 20 miles from the Russian-controlled Kakhovka Dam that Ukraine says Putin's forces are threatening to blow up. Russian authorities there now ordering urgent evacuations, telling civilians to leave immediately. A Russian-appointed official saying almost 25,000 have left already, fleeing on ferries, buses and trains with pets and personal belongings. They're giving up on the Kherson region. They're moving away heavy equipment. You can hear it, this Ukrainian serviceman says. Kherson City marks the only regional capital Russia's been able to control since the invasion began. Liberating it would deal Putin a massive strategic and symbolic blow. Russia now trying to divert Ukrainian manpower from those southern front lines by amassing thousands of troops up north in neighbouring Moscow ally Belarus. At the Belarusian border, Ukrainian troops prepare for the possibility that Russia could open a northern front again.
For the invasion in February, they say they were taken by surprise and they won't let that happen again.
This soldier, Alexei, says morale is strong. We are protecting our country, our families, our children. Our spirits are very high. This as Russia resorts to widespread attacks on civilian areas and infrastructure. Ukraine saying Moscow fired 33 missiles at Ukraine's energy facilities yesterday morning, but they managed to shoot down over half. More than 1 million now without electricity. The bitterly cold months still ahead.
Ukraine is already rationing power here with restrictions from the east to the west. And here in Kyiv, we've been told to expect rolling blackouts later today. Will.
Rolling blackouts. Britt Clennet on the ground for us in Ukraine. Britt, thank you.